Reading now from the Gospel of Jesus Christ according to Matthew. And this is the parable of the workers in the vineyard. The kingdom of heaven is like this. Once there was a man who went out early in the morning to hire some men to work in his vineyard. He agreed to pay them the regular wage, a silver coin a day, and sent them to work in his vineyard. He went out again to the marketplace at 9 o'clock and saw some men standing there doing nothing. So he told them, "You also go and work in the vineyard, and I will pay you a fair wage." So they went. Then at 12 o'clock and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. It was nearly 5 o'clock when he went to the marketplace and saw some other men still standing there. "Why are you wasting the whole day here doing nothing?" he asked them. "No one hired us," they answered. "Well then, you go and work in the vineyard," he told them. When evening came, the owner told his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, starting with those who were hired last and ending with those who were hired first." The men who had begun to work at 5 o'clock were paid a silver coin each. So when the men who were the first to be hired came to be paid, they thought they would get more. But they too were given a silver coin each. They took their money and started grumbling against the employer. "These men who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said, "while we put up with a whole day's work in the hot sun. Yet you paid them the same as you paid us." "Listen, friend," the owner answered one of them, "I have not cheated you. After all, you agreed to do a day's work for 1 silver coin. Now take your pay and go home. I want to give this man who was hired last as much as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do as I wish with my own money? Or are you jealous because I am generous?" And Jesus concluded, "So those who are last will be first, and those who are first will be last." It's Matthew 20, verses 1 to 16. It's a passage where Jesus is trying to bug us. He's needling us. He's trying to get under our skin and create a teachable moment. The parable I just read is calculated to offend. Like most parables, the basic story is simple. A vintner, and that should resonate with us, of course, here in Essex County, right? A vintner, the owner of a large vineyard, is desperate to harvest his crop of grapes. Maybe the weather is threatening to turn bad the next day. Or maybe the grapes are so bursting with juice that if they aren't picked soon, they will rot. Whatever the situation, the work needs to be done pronto. So, at the crack of dawn, the vintner finds some eager day laborers looking for work. He quickly hires them, promising each one a silver coin, a denarius, for his trouble. And these laborers work literally from sunup to sundown, a solid 12 hours including right through the heat of the day. Despite their diligent work, however, the picking is not moving fast enough to satisfy the farmer. So all day long, at 9 a.m., noon, 3 in the afternoon, and even as late as 5 p.m., 1 hour before quitting time, the farmer keeps hiring more laborers, handing each of them empty bushel baskets to heap high with grapes. So, we have the eager beaver laborers lining up for work at the crack of dawn. The not so eager ones at 9, noon, and 3. And the ne'er-do-wells, the lazy bums, at 5. 1 hour before quitting time. Have I got it right so far? The ne'er-do-wells, you know the type. They'd rather sleep in than get out of bed and look for work. All day long they sit along the edges of the town square, perhaps sipping cheap booze out of a paper bag. As time and time again, the farmer comes looking for workers. Lead in their backsides, not one of them jumps up for the chance to work and put food on the family table. Until 5 o'clock. Finally, when there are no other men left in the square, about the same time these lollygaggers are getting ready to head home and channel surf, the wealthy farmer comes back one last time. Why are you guys lazing around, wasting the whole day doing nothing, he asks. Because no one hired us, they answer. So he tells them, okay, then go and work in my vineyard. And away they go. Have I got it right so far? Well, folks, be forewarned. Once again, we're getting set up. Admit it. We're already looking at these bums, these last hired men, through squinty eyes. They're not exactly shining examples of the Protestant work ethic, are they? And just then, the story takes a twist. The vintner tells his foreman, call the workers and pay them their wages, starting with those who were hired last, and ending with those who were hired first. That's right. The 1 hour pickers get paid first. And why is that? Because had they been paid last, after the crack of dawn folks had already left, there would not been much punch to this parable, would there? Instead, our imaginary vintner makes sure that the laborers who worked the longest witness the fact that the lazy bums each got paid 1 whole denarius, 1 silver coin, as well. But this isn't the moment that brought out the anger. Being fair-minded men with a firm sense of right and wrong and of what they had coming to them, the crack of dawn folks assume that maybe, as it turns out, the going rate for this vineyard is 1 denarius per hour, not per day. Right? They're still hopeful. Oh, what a happy evening it would be in their households if that were the case. And they could come home with 12 denarii in their pocket. How amazing it would be to stop at the store on the way home and at long last be able to afford a candy bar for each of the kids. Maybe even some flowers for the dinner table. Maybe a better brand of wine to go with dinner. Too bad, though. That's not what happens. Everyone gets the same pay. 1 silver coin. 1 denarius. Is your skin itching right about now? What's going on here? You ever notice that most people have a certain look on their face the moment they feel cheated? It's kind of a pursed lips, sideways glance, the brow furrowed, head shaking expression that resonates with an anger that continues to rise up in the throat. Ever feel that? And that's how I see these early bird workers the moment the vintner's foreman drops a single measly denarius into their sweaty hands. Each of them is staring at that coin in disbelief. When one of them finally answers, "Can you believe this?" And the vintner overhears the remark, and so he reminds them that he has cheated no one. That was the contract they agreed to at the crack of dawn. And as for the rest, he goes on to say, what's that to you? You're not out anything. I can do what I want with my own money. So don't sneer and scorn my generosity. And that's grace, Jesus says. That's grace. That's what the kingdom of heaven is like. Grace turns everything upside down. But of course, we don't like that, which is why Jesus tells the parable in the first place. And this is more of the message that he tells. Without really meaning to do it, we often tend to measure our own spiritual worth according to how much work we do for the church. In the heat of the day, in the dark of the night, on Tuesday mornings when we don't feel much like driving to church yet again, even on Sundays, when other folks don't even show up for worship, we're here. And before we realize it, we slowly begin to assume that maybe we need less grace than some other folk. We slowly begin to think that we're getting to heaven on the installment plan. The installment plan, as much as by grace. But in fact, if we have work to do and the talent to do it, this needs to become not a point of comparison with anyone else, but a lifelong exercise in gratitude. Gratitude to the God who enables our work in the first place. Grace picked us to work in the kingdom in the first place. Grace allows us to perform ministry. Grace gives us the strength and the wherewithal to do the work. Grace compensates for our shortcomings in that work. And grace, not our own merits, is what crowns the work at the end of the day. Grace. Barbara Brown Taylor, she's one of my favorite preachers. She once asked this question in a sermon she gave. When we read this parable, why do we tend to identify with the laborers who were hired at the crack of dawn? Why do we assume that when God's kingdom fully comes, we will be the ones who feel upset, undervalued, and under-rewarded? How's that question for you? Why do we assume that we're among the hardest working laborers? Which of course begs the next question. Who told you and me that we've been working for 12 hours? Who's to say our work totals more than a mere 1 hour? Have we worked for God's realm of justice and equality as hard as Jesus? As hard as Paul? Or Moses? Or the prophet Muhammad? Or Mahatma Gandhi? Or Jane Addams, Betty Friedan, or Gloria Steinem? Can't say that I have. How about you? Barbara Brown Taylor imagines that in the parable, when the vintner's foreman hands the 1 hour pickers a whole denarii, a whole day's wage, there must have been hoots of laughter, lots of backslapping, and more than a few men saying, "Ho, ho, ho, aren't we the lucky ones?" And we can only pray that on final approach to the pearly gates, we will indeed discover that the grace of God is more than enough to get us into the kingdom. We should also pray that when we discover that fact, the great laughter, the great backslapping will be our own. And that we in turn will be apt to say, "Oh, oh, 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 ain't we the lucky ones?"